She was sold beside her sister. The cowboy said, "You'll both have a home with me." The wagon stopped with a long, tired creak, its wheels sinking slightly into the dry earth of the frontier town, a place so small it barely deserved a name, yet cruel enough to remember every soul who ever passed through it. Dust hung in the air like a permanent wound, settling on roofs, boots, and hearts alike. Clara stood pressed close to her younger sister, Eliza, her thin fingers gripping the frayed edge of Eliza's sleeve as though letting go would cause the world to split in two. They had learned young that silence was safer than tears, that stillness was better than begging. Around them, other wagons waited, some carrying livestock, some carrying dreams, and some, like this one, carrying broken futures disguised as opportunity. The man who owned the wagon barked orders without looking back, snapping his whip not at horses but at the air, reminding everyone who held power here. Clara lifted her chin as she always did when fear tried to bend her spine. She was 16, though hardship had carved more years into her eyes, and Eliza was 12, her gaze still soft enough to believe kindness might exist in places like this. Their parents were gone, lost to sickness and debt in a land that showed mercy to neither. And now the sisters were currency, sold together only because Clara had refused every offer that separated them. She had said it clearly the last time, her voice steady even as her heart shook. If you take one, you take both, or you take none. Most men laughed, some cursed. One struck the wagon rail in anger. None agreed until now. The town square buzzed with low voices, rough laughter, and the shuffle of boots worn thin by survival. Buyers stood in loose clusters, men hardened by labor and loneliness, their eyes measuring worth the way merchants measure grain. Clara felt each gaze like a brand against her skin, but she did not flinch. She wrapped one arm protectively around Eliza, whispering without sound that she was there, that she would always be there. Eliza leaned into her, trusting in a promise Clara prayed she could keep. The auctioneer cleared his throat, announcing their presence as though introducing cattle, listing skills and obedience as selling points, never once mentioning their names. Names had no value here. As the bidding began, Clara listened to the numbers rise and fall, her mind racing through every possible outcome. She imagined kitchens where hands were not gentle, fields where backs broke under endless sun, homes where kindness was rationed like water. She imagined being torn from Eliza's side, her sister's small hand slipping from hers in a moment that would haunt her forever. Fear threatened to choke her, but she swallowed it down. Fear was a luxury she could not afford. Then the crowd shifted. A man stepped forward from the edge of the square, tall and broad-shouldered, his presence quiet but commanding in a way that did not demand attention yet earned it all the same. He wore a weathered hat pulled low over steady eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen loss and chosen not to harden completely. His coat was plain, his boots scuffed, and his hands bore the marks of honest work rather than cruelty. He did not push, he did not shout. He simply stood there waiting, as though time itself bent slightly around his patience. Clara noticed him because he was not staring the way the others were. He looked at them not as property, but as people, and that unsettled her more than the hunger in other men's eyes. Eliza noticed him too, her grip tightening for a moment before loosening, just a little curiosity flickering where fear had lived. When the bidding reached a point where most men scoffed and stepped back, the cowboy finally spoke. His voice was low, steady, carrying easily across the square without force. He named a price that silenced the murmurs, a number high enough to end the contest. The auctioneer raised an eyebrow, surprised, and asked if the man understood the condition, that the girls came as a pair, no separating, no exceptions. The cowboy nodded once. "That's exactly what I'm buying," he said, not loud, not soft, just certain. A ripple moved through the crowd, some scoffing, some whispering about foolishness, about mouths to feed and trouble to come. Clara felt her heart pound so hard she thought it might betray her fear. She searched his face for signs, cruelty, greed, indifference, but found none she recognized. Instead, she saw something unfamiliar, resolve without menace. The deal was struck with a sharp crack of the auctioneer's gavel. Just like that, their lives tilted. Papers were signed. Coins changed hands. The man who had owned the wagon looked relieved to be rid of responsibility, already turning away as though Clara and Eliza no longer existed. The cowboy stepped closer, close enough that Clara could smell leather and dust, and the faint trace of coffee. He knelt slightly so he was not towering over them, his eyes level with theirs. For a long moment he said nothing, and the silence felt deliberate, respectful. Then he spoke, words that would echo in Clara's mind long after the dust settled. "I won't lie to you," he said. Life's hard where I live. Work's honest, days are long, but you'll be safe, and you'll be together. He paused, then added something no one had ever promised them before. You'll both have a home with me. Eliza gasped softly, a sound caught somewhere between disbelief and hope. Clara's breath stuttered. She wanted to doubt him, wanted to shield her heart from disappointment, but something in his tone made it impossible to dismiss outright. Why? She asked, the word escaping before she could stop it. He studied her for a moment, as though weighing the truth. Because no one should be alone in this world if they don't have to be, he answered. There was no heroism in his voice, no attempt to impress, just a simple belief stated as fact. The journey to his land took days. The wagon creaked along open plains and narrow trails, past stretches of grass that seemed endless and nights that swallowed sound. The cowboy, he told them his name was Thomas, did not speak much, but when he did, his words mattered. He gave them blankets when the nights grew cold and food before taking any himself. He did not pry into their past, nor did he make promises he could not keep. Clara watched him carefully, measuring every action, every silence. Trust, she knew, was built not from words but from patterns. And slowly, pattern by pattern, her guarded heart began to ease. Eliza, ever quicker to hope, started asking questions about the land, about the animals, about whether the stars always looked so close at night. Thomas answered each one patiently, pointing out constellations, telling stories of storms survived and mistakes learned. When they arrived, the land was not grand. A modest house stood against the wide sky, its paint faded, its porch worn smooth by years of boots and weather. A barn leaned slightly, stubbornly refusing to fall, much like the man who owned it. Clara felt a strange mix of relief and fear. This place did not look like a dream, but it looked real, and reality, she had learned, was safer than fantasy. Thomas helped them down from the wagon, carrying their small bundle of belongings as though it mattered. Inside, the house was clean but sparse, sunlight cutting through simple curtains. "It's not much," he said, almost apologetically. "But it's yours, too." The word yours settled deep in Clara's chest, heavy with meaning. That night, as the sisters lay side by side in real beds for the first time in months, Clara stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of the house. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know if safety would last. But for the first time since their parents died, she allowed herself to imagine a future that did not begin with fear. Somewhere beyond the walls, Thomas moved about, tending to chores, preparing for dawn. And though Clara would never say it out loud, she felt something unfamiliar take root. Hope, fragile and dangerous, but alive. Soft voice for narration, and if this story already touched your heart, remember, stories like this are shared here to remind us that kindness still exists. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story where broken lives find light again.